see that, and it makes me think of this client that I used to work with. And I remember he would stand there and just kind of rock and stand there. And I knew he would want something I had. And I know this client also had a lot of compliance-based therapy and was very, very prompt dependent. But in hindsight now, I do feel like I was missing that action because he would actually even look at it and look at me, so that joint attention. But as a
Mhm,
speech pathologist, right, we constantly think, oh, communication, you have to use words.
mhm.
And
Yes.
so I miss those opportunities to acknowledge him and see him for how he was communicating. And honestly, it's those kinds of things that break my heart that in the future, I wish everyone would start here and acknowledge. Hi, I'm Staci Neustadt. I am a speech language pathologist and the CEO at Making Sense of Autism, and I'm a student of Susan.
And I'm Susan Golubock. I am a now retired occupational therapist who has worked many, many years after I discovered even my own autism with other autistic individuals. I founded Making Sense of Autism because of my passion to not only understand my brain and how it worked differently, but to try to explain what I've learned to other people so that they're more understanding and therefore more accepting and more accommodating to autistic individuals.
So, our goal is to help you provide the right support without trying to fix autism, but by understanding it. So, whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or just someone who wants to learn, you're in the right place. Be sure to subscribe and join us every week. We talk about a new topic. Susan, we have been talking a little bit about initiation lately, and I know how misunderstood as a motivation issue it gets described as, and whether it's initiation of a request or a want or a need, starting a conversation, or even beginning a task, it becomes such a barrier for really all neurodivergent individuals. I find initiation of tasks sometimes difficult for myself as well. So, from your perspective, this is really an executive functioning barrier, but it impacts communication, it impacts academics, it impacts building relationships with other people. So, from your perspective, what's actually happening in the body or in the brain, and what helps?
Well, you have to remember that research has shown that connections within the autistic brain are inconsistent. So, a lot of it is processing and processing time. Now, I had one client that when I would ask him a question and I would start counting 1001, 1002, it took 15 seconds before he would initiate a response. That was how long it took him to make the connections necessary to search the brain to process auditorily what I was said, and then go to the language area of the brain to find the words that he wanted to say, and then go to the motor part to orally initiate. So it is just a matter of inconsistent brain connections. So it slows down the whole process of initiating. Now, if they struggle with, say, auditory processing, and they don't understand the words you use because the words you use are abstract or open-ended or not concrete and literal, now they're stymied because they don't even understand what you're talking about. So of course they can't initiate because they're stuck on step one, which is just understanding what was asked of them. Um, uh, Even if it's a like you said, a want, I want a cookie, I'm hungry. It's faster for the autistic individual to simply do it themselves
Mhm.
To initiate an action, they don't have to go through the processing and then the word finding, and they eliminate all that part. Then they just go directly to the motor part of the brain and act. And therefore, then you're like, well, and this is they'll pull you and take you. They'll act rather than take the time to have to process what you said. So
Yes.
this is why in executive functioning is so delayed in autistic individuals. The same thing with ADHD,
Hmm.
because the connections are they either go too fast, too many, or they're too slow and they can't make the connection. And so executive functioning tasks are delayed in developing because of that connections.
Yes, I see that. And it makes me think of this client that I used to work with. And I remember he would stand there and just kind of rock and stand there. And I knew he would want something I had. And I know this client also had a lot of compliance-based therapy and was very, very prompt dependent. But in hindsight now, I do feel like I was missing that action because he would actually even look at it and look at me, so that joint attention. But as a
Mm-hmm.
speech pathologist, right, we constantly think, oh, communication, you have to use words. And
Yeah.
so I miss those opportunities to acknowledge him and see him for how he was communicating. And honestly, it's those kinds of things that break my heart that in the future, I wish everyone would start here and acknowledge all forms of communication because just like you said, it's easier for the action than it is the words. Um, and I think the biggest misconception with that, and I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but is people think, well, if I don't make them use their language, if I don't make them say something, how are they going to learn to use
Yeah.
language in those moments? So how do you respond to that one?
Well, consider the language can come after the action. In other words, they act, so they're communicating the fastest way they know how. And if you interpret that as, oh, I think this is what you're telling me, um, and it's very quick for them to agree, yes, no, because again, it's an action. They process and they recognize they don't have to go and research from the memories to find the words to say. They recognize the words you're saying. Oh, yeah, yeah, that's right. I am. Now you've given them the words so that they are learning. You learn through observation. You learn by just taking it in consistently. So if you're consistently telling them the words, next thing you know, that connection is going to strengthen. It's going to be
Yes.
easier for them to pull up that word. Eventually, they'll come out with it because now that connection is strengthened because you keep telling them what they've said with their body, and you've given them the
Yes.
word to be able to say it using words.
And the consistency piece is so important. That's why I always tell families my 30 minutes or 45 minutes or 1 hour a week is not going to teach a new vocabulary word or teach a new skill. It is what is consistently implemented all week long. That's why our kids do say words that I always tell parents, how many times do you think they've heard you say that? So
Mhm.
I love that. And this is really powerful for our AAC communicators, I feel like, because this even that visual really helps with them finding the language. And it really helps, I feel like, with our even non-speaking or limited speaking or sometimes non-speaking, the individuals that sometimes can talk and sometimes can't. I think this is really powerful to make sure and acknowledge that action. So let's shift to that. Oh, did you want to say one more thing about that?
Well, because you mentioned AAC.
Yeah.
Now, not only are you verbally going to tell them the words, but if they're communicating using an AAC, now is the opportune time to show them, oh, I think this
Yes.
is what you mean. And you go to their AAC device, help them find the word.
Yes.
So that link between where I find it to express it versus being able to say it. So for your non speakers using an AAC, again, I think you mean this, and you go directly to the and let the AAC device say it.
Yeah.
So now you're mirroring for them how they would respond.
Yes, I love that. So then let's move to initiation of task, which that might be brushing your teeth in the morning. It might be doing a worksheet. It might be finishing a puzzle, just a task. So what are some things that you think get in the way and how could people support that?
Okay, I can tell you from my own personal experience that if I want to get started in the morning and get myself breakfast, I have to literally stop any thoughts that I have. I have to consciously focus on tell myself what to do. Nothing comes automatic for me. So that delay, if I'm thinking about something, I'm unable to do. I can't start what it is I think I want to do because my brain is still thinking about something else.
Yeah.
So that is a major initiation issue for me if I want to do a task. The secondary issue is let's say my mind is clear. I've heard what you have to say. I'm ready to begin the task, but I don't know where to start. What is step number one? What's the most important? I get to the, and I've had teachers see this. Here's a checklist. You go and you check it off as you do it. Well,
Mhm.
the first thing the kid heard was checklist. I go and they check off every single one of them ahead of time before they
Oh,
even start
right.
because that's what they've processed as the last thing they remember. And again, working memory for autistics is another issue. We can't retain it. So when you give us 4 steps, we remember the last one heard because
Yes.
we can't retain what the other three were.
Yeah.
And here, the checklist doesn't help because you focus on the check. You need a visual, like a flip chart,
Mhm.
i.e., here's step number one, and that's all you see. Now, I know that when I'm done with this, I flip it over and here's step number two. But don't give me all four because now I don't know how to deal with them.
Mhm.
Give me one thing to focus on at a time because just like I know if I want to have breakfast, I have to focus on one thing at a time. I have to go get my glass to fill it up with water so that I can take my morning medication. And then and I have to go through that series. Now, if I want to eat, okay, where do I find my I mean, I can do focus on one thing at a time. And
Mhm.
when you give me multiple instructions and you give me even visuals, a whole too many visuals, I don't know which one to focus on.
I love that. And you're right. I think too many visuals is really key here because you're right. When oftentimes we give all the different steps, and don't get me wrong, there are some individuals who can do that. But if it's not working, I love that idea of just a flip chart. So we flip through just focusing on one thing at a time. I think that will help a lot. And then, okay, so this is probably more for maybe less support needs, but still support needs of initiation of social communication. And I know this is a big one you've been talking about with autistic adults. So what are the barriers there and how could people help?
I think anxiety and fatigue are the
Mm,
two biggest obstacles.
yeah.
Anxiety, I get this from my autism adult support group all the time. I'm afraid they'll reject me. I'm
Mm,
afraid if the way I say it, it'll be misinterpreted and and it won't work. So I'm afraid to even start
yeah.
or to initiate. But energy, I just don't have the energy. I know I want to do this, and the opportunity is here now, but I'm burnt out.
Mhm.
Cognitive, it's just too hard for me right now. So I don't do it.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest obstacles.
No, I can see that. And that's another topic definitely for another day, autistic burnout, because that could be a whole conversation in itself. I will link some resources. Dr. Neff is an autistic psychologist who has amazing booklets on autistic burnout that I will link below. But I love these suggestions. And I feel like, it's kind of hit. Hopefully, the parents and professionals listening have resonated with one suggestion or another and have seen this and how you can just start to shift how you view these things, whether it is seeing an action as communication and recognizing it, whether it is simplifying the steps so the overwhelm isn't there and so that it feels better to initiate the task, or just supporting that burnout or that anxiety in order to achieve even just the baby steps of initiating a social interaction. And what I always, you and I talk a lot about shared interests. We start there. And I'm very aware that social interactions are very different today than they were even pre-COVID. So again, that would be a whole conversation for another day. So
Yep.
great ideas and strategies. Thank you, Sue.
Okay, thanks for asking, Staci.